we now have some minor and major changes that we've made to the piece. This was like Chip's main direction, but also some like interpretation of others in the class, things like that. So at this point, I'd spoken about what we got up to last lesson, but I needed to talk about the use of facilitation and the scales, so the three different character traits and the three different mixing desk idea and the scales that we had, and how we were going to do this and how we were going to make it different. So I talked about how Chip directed the scene with Lady Macbeth and Macbeth, and Act 1 Scene 7, the scene just before they kill Duncan. So this is like his decision in order to try and do what he said he was going to do in order to become king. And then we have these three motivators that are happening at the same time. So we segue into it by having the three people behind chairs. We decided that we were going to have three people on chairs, each representing a different character trait. So we decided on the traits morality, which I am, guilt in the middle, and on the other end is ambition. Ambition's a really important one, especially because it's his fatal flaw. It's because they all talk about his faulting ambition and how he he reaches too far and it causes his downfall because he's too ambitious, he's too greedy, he wants too much, and he loses sight of what's really important, and he makes these mistakes and he kills the king, and then he just doesn't stop with killing people and things like that, because then he ends up killing Banquo, and he'll basically kill anyone that comes in his way, really. So in terms of that, we have these three sliders represented by people, and because Chip directed it so that certain traits were higher and certain traits were lower, we started off. We were going to start off. We were playing around with the idea that some of the audience members will come and set it, and then the actors will just do it as it is. But then we decided that'd be really difficult, and also it might not be confusing. It might be confusing and might not show the right interpretations that it should, really. So we had the three sliders. We were going to set them as what was actually happening in the scene, so that guilt would be really high and ambition would be mid to low and morality would be quite high. And we decided that might be a good idea, but actually in all the conversations about it, we thought, well, in order to help the audience interact more and have for them to more to talk about, more to evaluate, more to think about, we would have Joel, as one of the fake students, come up and set the sliders wrong. So have them set really wrong, because I guess you could say it was his interpretation, and it's really good to talk about interpretations in the exams, so it's a really good idea. So we can have like the sliders set on the three different levels that Joel sets them, so they're really incorrect, and then do the scene as Chip directed it. In the middle point, we pause and we actually have a moment where we evaluate where the sliders are at, and this is where the main and key facilitation points come in. We talked about what we potentially will be doing during this point, so going out into the audience, talking about why they think the sliders are wrong, how they would set them, going back and changing them based on audience participation. So this is all setting it up so that because it's incorrect, it needs correcting, and it's obvious that it's incorrect. So then we can get the different interpretations, and we can have this sort of discussion across loads of different of the audience members, the students, the fake students, and also the cast, to talk about all these possible interpretations, so that them as students who are going into their real exams can sort of pick different ideas that they hear, put it all together, and then they can talk about those different interpretations during their own exam and say, I think that, but you could also interpret this as because Macbeth is showing that he's really guilty at this point, and they can really emphasize this. And I think that the way that Bruce and Catherine have been directed to do, it really emphasises certain traits especially, so they can sort of pick these out, and also how the traits influence each other. So once we've corrected them, the acting continues until the end, and then we talk about whether we thought they were in the right place, whether we would change them, and also about Lady Macbeth's scales and where she might fit and whether she's the main influencer. And then we start to talk about how influential we feel the three of them are, and whether which one is the most important and which one is a real reason. So we have 3 different teams that we also are set into, which I forgot actually to mention earlier. I should have mentioned that earlier. We have 3 different teams to set into that focus on a particular slider, but then later on we're going to focus on them as a whole, and we can still have the comparisons with each different separate group who are focusing on sliders. So we have each separate group with a particular fake student, and they can talk about their own particular slider and get quotes from the kids, and basically get them to like use their own heads into how they might answer that particular question. So in terms of that, that's how we were gonna do this particular scene. We go from that scene into the second one, which will hopefully provide a contrast to that. We were thinking about potentially doing it in actual English. We're talking about the actual Duncan's death in between, the idea of maybe like some kind of facilitation towards that, or just really basically speed running through that and then going on to the second scene to show a comparison and a bit more facilitation in that scene as well. So those are the ideas that we've been working on, but mainly I wanted to talk about the actual facilitation of that scene, and how it would be effective, and how it is being effective so far, hopefully in rehearsals. So yeah.